Welcome to the Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky, a weekly podcast that breaks down politics, policy, and current affairs. I'm Michael Brodkorb.
And I'm Becky Scherr.
I am so excited to welcome back my co-host, Becky Scherr. Becky has been out on maternity leave, adding another future voter to her household, and we've missed her voice, her insights, and her razor-sharp takes on all things politics and policy. But sadly, in this episode, we will confront the tragic assassination of Melissa Hortman and her husband and the violent attack on Senator John Hoffman and his wife. This episode will do a deep dive into the rise of political violence, its shocking implications for Minnesota politics, and what comes next for this state and its leaders. This episode is going to be tough. It's going to be a real emotional roller coaster, but I'm so appreciative that Becky is returning to help discuss these unimaginable tragedy that has shaken everyone, and we'll be thoughtful and we'll be respectful, and we're going to try to help today. So thank you for joining us. Becky, welcome back.
Thank you. I am glad to be back. Wish it was a better topic and scenario for our first episode back. A tragic, horrific incident over the weekend, and look forward to discussing it with you and following your lead on this. I know you've been out championing the cause and following along just like the rest of us, and so it will be a great conversation. But thank you for holding down the fort the last couple of weeks. I have missed it. I have missed you, and I am glad to be back today.
Becky, what can you share you're willing to share about the new addition?
Yes, his name is Walker. He is 8 weeks old now, so it has gone very fast. He is right now starting to smile a lot and talk. He's going to be like his brother, I think. He's a talker. Big brother Wyatt is so in love, wants to hold his hand and give him kisses all day, every day, and calls him my baby. It's so sweet to watch. And so, yeah, we're getting our bearings and sleeping while we can, but we've been pretty lucky getting some 4.5 hour chunks to start most nights, which can't complain about that.
Is your husband, most importantly, getting the well-deserved rest that he needs?
He is sleeping like they say sleeping like a baby, but he's getting enough sleep.
That's good to know. Well, Becky, I'm really sorry that the circumstances of you coming back, and we're going to talk more about what you've been doing and the life changes you've had, next week and on future episodes. But we're going to try to spend as much time today while we're with you for the next, 45 minutes or so to talk about the events that have just shaken Minnesota to its core. And we're going to do something different, something we haven't done before, which is we're going to try to use this opportunity on the podcast to help raise some money for some of the victims. I want to acknowledge Siri Everett with the DFL. She has organized she shared on social media some links to help people out. And I have just taken her links and I've made them kind of easy for people to do. If you're seeing those links right now on this live stream, first of all, I want to thank Siri for putting those links out and allowing people to donate. There are 2 links there, one for the Hoffmans and one to help the Hortman's children. And so those links are there for people to give and to help donate to the Hoffman's recovery and their recovery, and to help the recovery process and the rebuilding process of the Hortman children. And so we're going to leave those up for the duration. And again, I want to thank Siri Everett with the Minnesota DFL for putting those links out and allowing people to help contribute. They're going to stay up the entire length of this episode. And if you see them at the bottom and want to give, those are, again, not links that I came up with, but those are GoFundMe pages that and links that were shared with Siri Everett with the DFL. And we just want to, Becky and I want to use every asset and tool and anything we can do to platform and give support and help to people right now. And so I thank you to Siri for sharing those links, making them available, and we're going to promote her links for the duration of this episode and going forward. And so if you have the ability to donate, and give and want to give, please consider giving. There's a link there. Just type that into your browser. There's one for the Hoffmans and one for the Hortmans to help donate during this in just absolutely terrible time. And I don't know if there they are. The links are showing, so this is live, and this is the first time we've done this. So I just wanted to make sure that the links were working. So here's what we know. What we know is that on the early hours of June 14th, that Minnesota was just absolutely shaken by what, by all accounts, appears to be politically motivated in some ways, based on what we know, violence. The first person that we know that was targeted or that was shot was sadly the Hoffmans. Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were ambushed at their Champlin home by an individual who's now been captured and identified as Vance Boltler of Minnesota. He was posing as a police officer, went to the door, and ended up shooting Senator Hoffman and his wife, I believe, 17 times. And reports that have come out have shown that John Hoffman's wife, Yvette, shielded their daughter from the gunman, and both miraculously survived. And it is remarkable that both of them survived. And sadly, though, just over an hour later, Boltler went to the home of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman, and sadly shot and killed Speaker Hortman and her husband, and also their dog was also shot in this incident. And so that's what a lot of us woke up to on Saturday morning. And then over the next 36 hours, there was a manhunt across the state. And roughly 36 hours later, down by Green Isle, thanks to the hard work and dedication of law enforcement and resources and citizens that were self-aware, Bolter was arrested, and he is in custody, and he is facing immediately federal charges right now. This is being federally charged, and so he was captured alive and faces now federal charges. That's what Minnesotans woke up to and consumed, sadly, this weekend. Becky, how did you learn about it, and your thoughts on what you learned?
Yeah, like everyone, on Saturday I was going about business like usual, and I got a text message from Brian Stresser, a frequent guest on here, sharing the news that was just breaking on X, that they were shot. There was little to be known, but we did know at that time that Hoffman and his wife and Hortman and her husband had been shot. And then waited, Governor Walz was having a press conference that morning, and watched that, and just horrified to learn the news of Hortman and her husband passing, and how horrific the shootings were, how much of an ambush they were, how much thought and planning went into it, and how the suspect, the assassin, I guess we can say, how he was on the loose, how he was on the run, and it was really, really scary. Texting with some friends, some folks who either work at the legislature or have been, and it was just a morning consumed by fear, and which is, we can get into a little bit more, but what this gentleman wanted and planned.
I want to be very, very delicate and very careful. First of all, there's an ongoing criminal investigation into this matter, and I don't want to say anything that's inaccurate. This is a live stream, and what we're trying to do on this episode is just acknowledge it, talk about it, and use our platform as best we can to hopefully get some help to those, to the Hoffmans and to the Hortman children in their, and as they go through this recovery. I heard about it by getting some text messages, and I checked in with my legislators and legislators that I knew on both sides, what I think that there was just sadly and remains to be an absolute climate of fear. This has robbed so many people of not only the Hortmans and the Hoffmans. We have people who have lost their parents. Members of the legislature have lost their colleagues, their leaders, their friends. This is unimaginable. And I don't want to speak from any standpoint as if I knew Melissa Hortman or the Hoffmans. I've never met John Hoffman or his wife. I've met Melissa Hortman a number of times. And so I don't want to try to claim in this episode that I had some deep connection to either of the families. But I am, as a Minnesotan, I'm someone who cares and is sympathetic and empathetic. And we obviously, Becky, have a podcast where we talk about politics. We've talked about Hortman and Hoffman, and may not have mentioned their families, but this is an unbelievable tragedy that has hit this state. And it is not only, aside from the loss and the victimization of people, the fear and climate that this is going to create going forward is just simply unimaginable. Without divulging who I spoke with, but I can just say that a lot of legislators that I spoke with were afraid. We're afraid to go outside. We're afraid to to remain scared to go outside and remain scared to circulate and be a part of society. People are going to need help getting groceries and getting deliveries and getting their lawn done and just doing the simple things that so many of us take for granted. And this is a really scary time, I think, for politics in Minnesota and across the country. But this is going to fundamentally, I think, change how we interface and interact in politics and as human beings in this state for probably the rest of my life. This is that type of situation.
You know, I remember last year or the year before, where you're talking about Mayor Fry had put out I think an op-ed about the threats to his family, and how him and his wife, we had a conversation about how him and his wife were debating whether they were going to have more children because of threats. And this is something that is not unique to one side or the other. It affects Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and completely up and down the ticket. I mean, we know there are threats against city council members all the way up to U.S. senators and the president, obviously. And to know, we talk a lot about the sacrifice that elected officials make. Normally, when we talk about that, we mean time with their family and, freedom to go on vacations and the ability to, be coaches for their children and those kind of sacrifices. And obviously we have mentioned the sacrifices of members of the family as well, that they lose time with their parents or their loved ones. They don't always get to have their parents at a recital or different events. And this just really shows how much of a sacrifice and how unnecessary it is. It should not have to be the ultimate sacrifice. And these individuals, I'm like you, I've met Hoffman a number of times. I've met Hortman in passing. I do not have personal relationships with either of them. But I have loved seeing the stories that have come out from folks that did know them, whether in passing or very well. And the stories of Hortman, I liked some stuff that Bill Walsh, who I worked with at the Senate, had shared about when they were working together a decade ago. They would often kind of give each other insider scoop of how many amendments each side had to know if they were going to be able to make it home for dinner or to tuck their kids into bed. She was just a mom, I mean, at the end of the day. And her and her husband, they were just parents, and they contributed to their communities, and they liked to raise dogs and bake, and it's just wild that that in addition to being a great strategist and communicator, and we can chat all about her more in a little bit, but it's just truly horrific and a really sad point of where we are in society, that this is the sacrifice that was made. And it's not just missing a recital or a kid's basketball game, that she lost her life and her husband lost her life. And the Hoffmans are likely going to have a long path to recovery with the depth of their injuries. And that their daughter was there and had to call 911. The trauma and tragedy that is happened this weekend is going to be felt and realized for years and years to come, and for the lifetime of the individuals involved.
One of the things that I heard from folks was, will some people step away now? Will some people not run? Will some people resign? That's a discussion that the Minnesotans, that we need to have, is people need to feel safe, and they don't right now. And it's no, let's just state the obvious, Becky, but I think we need to state, no one deserved this. There's nothing that warranted this. There's nothing that, nobody deserved this. Nothing to justify this level of hatred and violence and rage that was done. But sadly, the legislature is going to have to go forward. And the reason why I'm not trying to move ahead too fast, but I don't know. I mean, let's be blunt. Legislators make $50,000 a year. Are you a legislator right now making $50,000 a year you've been inside your house because of a madman who's been out there targeting people? That's the climate we're in. And I don't know what I would do if I was a legislator right now. I don't know the decision that I would make. But what I do know is that Minnesota and Minnesotans can rise to the occasion. And one of the things that I've tried to do is just to reach out to people, not to be a pest, not to insert myself, but just to say, can I help? You're not alone. What can we do? And I really hope right now that legislators across this state, regardless of their political affiliation, are being contacted by people, and they're being shown love and support and care. Because whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat, you need that support right now. Sadly, and I want to be factual, but sadly, this list and the information that we have right now is that this was a partisan list. This was targeting Democrats in Minnesota. And I think there comes a little bit of an extra responsibility on Republicans, I think, to make sure that they acknowledge that reality and accept it and reach and make sure that their DFL colleagues feel safe. This is this is the stuff of nightmares. What I saw in terms of the security footage, the pictures that have been released, the manner in which this is done, this is the stuff of nightmares. And this is the type of thing that makes you rethink everything that you do. And I'm thinking about how legislators feel safe in committee, and how they feel safe at the Capitol, and how they feel that. And how they're going to need to feel safe is by being reassured and being supported by those around us who can do that. And people need to be able to do that. People need to put down their partisan sabers right now and just recognize that a senator that may be of a different political party or a rep just needs to know that they can go to a town hall and they can go to a space and they're not going to be targeted, because this is a violation of space that is simply unimaginable and done in a way under the guise of being an agent of law enforcement that really shakes the way we think. We're taught to seek out helpers, and law enforcement are the people that we're supposed to seek out. And to know that this nightmare was at the door as a law enforcement officer makes this tragedy even more tragic, because the after effects are just going to make us second guess things in so many ways.
A couple things just to add on there. I think a lot of times over the last few years in general, or in specifically, but over the history of democracy in general, we kind of elected officials lose some of their humanity. People just look at them and forget that they're, again, just moms and dads, and just, former accountants or teachers or doctors or stay-at-home moms. They forget that they're real people. And, I certainly, in my time working at the legislature and in Congress, was on the receiving end of those phone calls and emails that people clearly forget that they're just talking to a person and just rail on them and their politics and their policies and their votes. And back in one of my first jobs, we did political trainings, and one of the things we talked about was remembering to, if you are somebody who contacts legislators or elected officials when you disagree with them, try contacting them when you agree with them. Tell them thank you. Tell them you did a great job. Thank you for standing up for this group or community. Tell them that you appreciate their vote, because they get so much hatred. They get so much negativity that we do need to do more of that, of the thank yous. And it's just the fact that we've gotten to where the norm is that you can just say horrific things in emails or verbally to these people just because they have an election certificate is just unnecessary and absolutely unacceptable. But with this situation, like you said, the fact that he took advantage of the situation, that police are helpers. Police are somebody. If a police is at your door, why wouldn't you open it? I'm grateful. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, but we're going to say it probably more than once, how grateful we are for the hundreds and hundreds of individuals who spent their Father's Day weekend searching for this madman, who spent their time protecting legislators and other elected officials who were targeted and feeling unsafe. The fact that they thought so quickly to put out an alert that they would be only sending police in twos. So if you got a knock on the door or somebody approached you singularly, that call dispatch, get a verification that that is a real police officer. The fact that they, one, had to do that is horrific, but that they thought so quickly to do that. And then the fact that they acted so fast in this situation, I mean, most certainly saved lives. That from the articles and news reports that I've seen, it was a police officer who was getting off duty at a precinct. I don't know if it was in Brooklyn Park or Champlain, but who had the wherewithal to say, why don't, to troopers, why don't you check over at the Hortman's house after they heard the news of Hoffman's? And that's where they ran into the shooter. And while unfortunately they were not able to change the situation for the Hortmans, his car was left there, which had a ridiculous amount of future plans in there, and them intercepting that because that individual, that police officer, had the thought to send officers there. We can only be grateful for the lives that were saved because of their fast thinking and their full grasp of the situation.
I want to just take a moment to remind our listeners that on the bottom you will see a couple links. I'm going to try to remember that as we're on here for the next half hour or so. Remind our listeners that those are two links that Siri Everett with the DFL helped create. Those are two links to some GoFundMe pages. If you have the resources and are willing to, those are two links to help both the Hortman children and the Hoffmans in their recovery and in their rehabilitation, which is going to be lengthy, expensive, and anything can help. And so those are links again that Siri Everett with the DFL. It's Siri like Apple, so it's Siri Everett with the DFL created those links, and I just used them in a different format so they could be easy to remember. So those are 2 links there. If you just type them into your browser, they're through GoFundMe, and they could do some good, and we're going to keep mentioning them throughout this episode. Becky, one of the things I want to talk about is social media a bit, because social media can do good and social media can do bad. And as we've discussed before, I think tragedy social media is the worst. And I want to highlight some of the good. I reached out to some members, and here we have Siri Everett with the DFL, creating links on social media and sharing so people across the world can give money to donate. But there's also some ugliness on social media. And I would caution people to ask themselves, is your voice needed right now? Do you need to speak up on this? Do you need to comment? Is your take or analysis really needed? This is an active law enforcement investigation. It's an ongoing law enforcement investigation, and everyone is an armchair detective. And I'm sure a lot of you have watched Netflix series and think you know what you're doing. But it's theories and ideas and questions. Social media is not the best for them right now, and positing and sharing information before it's not verified. I had Julius Hernandez on, and Jeff Colbon, and we talked a bit about social media. And I want to just share a couple accounts. Brian Strauser and Rob Dorr are 2 people that I think cover issues from the legal perspective and share that type of information, are going to be very helpful in which to follow. And you can search for both those names on X and other platforms. The other one, a person I spoke with on Saturday, was Shannon Watson with Majority in the Middle. Shannon Watson and her organization do a lot of work about helping people from different political parties speak and talk. And it's important that that happens. And so those are helpful links to people to talk about. I would encourage people to only share news stories from credible sources that have been verified, and only in law enforcement to seek out public information officers and people tied to law enforcement that can give you credible information. Now more than ever, it is important to think before you post. And there have been a number of distractions and a number of bad examples that we're going to talk about in future episodes about how I think well-intentioned people could be really callous and not thoughtful right now. And I want to give people a lot of grace. But I will say that doing less is more right now. Not everyone needs to hear your theory about what you think happened, or your cousin's friend who may have known this person, other types of stuff. Have those discussions offline. Have those kind of, and come up with those theories, and then present them to law enforcement and present them to responsible authorities. Don't maybe just go out and post them on social media right now, and be thoughtful and considerate, because social media is a blessing and a curse. And I think what we're trying to do, Becky, right now is to use the platform that we've been privileged to build in a good, positive way. And I hope others think of that too.
Completely agree. I mean, I think the whole premise of what we try to do and what we talk about often is to help tamp down some of this political rhetoric that's dangerous, and to show that we can bridge the divide and have civil conversation and bring it back to a calm, reasonable situation. I think that you and I disagree on policy and politics sometimes. I think we do with our guests a lot of times. And we all need to do our part, not just us because we have a podcast, but everybody listening and everybody in the world, especially in the United States, need to do what we can to just cool things off a little bit and bring some civility back to our conversations, and remember that the individuals involved are just men and women who served, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. And but as you said, right now there are a lot of folks on social media who have opinions, and opinion, there's a time and a place for that. But right now, I think we need to also give space to those that are grieving, because it is wide. And it is, it's the folks that knew the individuals, Hortman and her husband, and the Hoffmans, that knew them personally. It's people who's sat before them in committee or appreciated a vote that changed their lives that they took. There's a lot of people that are impacted by Senator Hoffman and Speaker Hortman, and their spouses. I mean, I don't think we can forget the good and the backgrounds of those individuals. And I think everybody just needs to take a pause and let things play out in the legal world, in the law enforcement world, and let these folks grieve and try to take one day at a time.
I remember when Senator Wellstone died. I was the research director at the Republican Party. I saw them, the plane that day. I saw them leave. And they were, Senator Wellstone and his family and campaign aide and others were dead later that day. And that was a time before social media. And I can't imagine, and I've spoken to some reporters about this, I can't imagine what that tragedy would have been like had social media been around. Because there has been, and I'm not trying to lecture anyone, but just say that there's been a lot of ugliness I've seen. And tragedy, social media is the worst. And it's tough to break through because everybody wants to break news and share a perspective, and it can become chaos and it can become so ugly. And I cannot begin to tell you, Becky, as much as I'm so glad you're back, and I'm sad that this is the first episode that you're back, but there are so many times over the last few days I've leaned back into our conversations and some of our guests to talk and think about how to approach conversations and how to deal with stuff. Reaching out to people and talking and just being there, but also limiting my social media commentary. And it's tough because I want to wring some people's necks. It's tough. And I want to wring their necks in the right way, but just because I know they're grieving and I know they're trying to do their best. But I also will say that I've reached out to some people that have been on our podcast just to see how they're doing. And I don't think anyone is doing well. And I think what I hope to accomplish, while we're on for the next half hour or so remaining is just try to just talk about it. And maybe this is a little bit of therapy for you and a little bit of therapy for me, but just try to steer people in the right direction and give them some hope and some perspective. I will say news has just been released that DFL Representative Kristen Bonner said the gunman stopped at her house before, and she was apparently out of town. And I have to tell you something. I'm a dad, husband, live in Egan, and over the years, I've been targeted in a number of rough ways. And I'm not trying to equate anything to what these folks did. But as someone who takes his personal security very safely, and has had to deal with people coming to his house and other types of stuff, this is the stuff of nightmares. And this is the type of stuff that really is just a violation. At the door, dressed as a law enforcement officer, is really one of just the nightmare scenarios. And I cannot imagine what is going through the mind of these legislators right now as they think about processing this and going back and having to sit down and explain to my children, somebody comes to the door, I have to answer, and mom or I have to answer, and we can't be but the absolute devious and terrifying steps that this person went to make them look like a helper it's such a violation. And we're going to hear more stories about this. And my hope is that when we hear more about these stories, that we're compassionate. Nobody deserved this. Nobody deserved this. And I hope we start to humanize people more than what we are. And that's one of the sad things about social media, Becky, is I think it allows us to connect, but it also allows us to take things. It also allows us to think it's cheapen it. And I go back to something I've said before in the podcast. I'll never tweet something out I wouldn't say to someone's face. But I think about what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I've read. And I really hope that this can be a point where we can come together as a state.
Yeah, I want to be hopeful. It's hard to. I think it's hard to think that folks, the average bear who doesn't work in the political realm, it's hard to think that they're not just going to return to consuming the news and the social media accounts that they follow. They're not going to continue to spew the hatred. I want to be hopeful, and I hope this is kind of a reckoning for everyone to get there. It was something that made a lot of national news and was the talk of news and members of Congress, from all across the country. But it's kind of hard to still be hopeful that this will change. At the very least, like you said, I'm hopeful that here in Minnesota, we see individuals involved in the political that are close, kind of in the inner circle of both sides of the aisle, try better and do better, and don't let these deaths be in vain. I hope we do better on their behalf, because it seems from all accounts that I've read and heard, and even the statement of the Hortman children is they ended their statement with, the best way to honor our parents' memory is to do something, whether big or small, to make our community just a little better for someone else. And the fact that they, in their time of grief, were able to put that plea out, I think speaks immensely about who they are and how they were raised. And so I'm hopeful. Again, this is, I don't know the Hortmans. I didn't know them. But all the stories that you hear is just incredible of who they are and how they lived. Take politics out of it. And again, the stories of the baking and the raising service dogs, and how the dog that Gilbert, who tragically was killed as well, that Melissa Hortman had trained as a service dog, but he was too happy-go-lucky and he failed his test. And so she was so grateful that he got to stay with them. I mean, these are the people that they are. And so let's, we have to do better. We have to try to do more, whether it's through donating, or however, but just our conversations with around the Christmas tree and at the Thanksgiving table, to make it so that it can change.
Becky, I'm going to tolerate a lot, but I'm not going to let you use this tragedy to push your Thanksgiving agenda.
That's your Thanksgiving agenda.
I'm not going to let you do that. Becky, put yourself in that comms PR strategist, but do it from a perspective of a Republican. What would you be encouraging a Republican elected official, someone in the party, what would you encourage them to be doing right now?
I mean, I think that I've actually been very pleased with what I have seen. I saw a great article, a great interview with Speaker Dameth, who talked about how she, for the last 2 to 3 years, has been meeting weekly with Speaker Hortman, and how friendly they have become, and how, she even said that she modeled her speakership on the respect and humility that Hortman led, and how she led the chamber with dignity and universal respect, and hearing the stories. I know Leader Niska has done the same and lifting up his voice and sharing his interactions and relationship with Speaker Hortman, and hearing from some staffers around there of just the little things. Rachel Apikowski, who has worked at the Capitol for a long time, had mentioned how Hortman always remembered her and said hi and would have greetings, and just again sharing the memory and the tribute to these individuals, I think, is a great place to start. And then I also think, holding folks accountable when they're spreading the misinformation. I saw former Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka was correcting the record a little bit on social media of some folks, saying that this shooter, because he was on a task force appointed by Governor Walz, is therefore a Democrat, and correcting the record. I think that's one thing that I would expect and hope that these Republicans do when they see or are involved with or confronted with some of that misinformation, because sitting by and just letting it fly is doing no good. It's doing more harm. And just at the bare minimum is not joking. We saw, I think everybody probably saw Senator Mike Lee's horrific jokes over the weekend, and Senator Kevin Cramer, also a Republican from North Dakota, called him out on it, and among many of the Republicans that did call him out on that. And cheers to Senator Smith and Klobuchar, who both confronted him and read him the riot act about how inappropriate. There's a great letter that the Senate Smith's deputy chief of staff sent to his staff about how inappropriate it was. But to see the Republicans call out some of this, the inaccuracies, the unnecessary behavior of folks that think that there is a time and place of this to joke and to make light of it. We're not there. I don't necessarily think we'll ever be there, but it's not now. And so I think it's really, really important for us to do those things as Republicans, is to, one, dispel the misinformation, and to help lift up and pay tribute to these incredible individuals who lost their lives, whose lives are forever changed in the Hoffmans, and even those that were just on the targeted list. I can't imagine how Boehner and Senator Rest and the other individuals on that targeted list, how that is forever going to change them and their lives. So anything as Republicans, as independents, as folks who are maybe apolitical and don't follow the Democrat or Republican way of life, just doing better is what we need to do.
You're right. You said it incredibly eloquently. And it's a perspective that I'm so appreciative to have back. And you've been missed. I want to talk about anger for a second. I want to talk about anger. I remember in the aftermath of Wellstone dying that there was a lot of anger. And Democrats have a right to be angry right now. And we Republicans and others need to give them some space. Not to say that, look, Republicans in the aftermath of this situation, legislators of both parties were under security, and many still remain. And this is a life-altering situation for every legislator, Republican or Democrat. But the one thing that I remember is realizing that Democrats, particularly in 2002, had a right to be angry, and giving them that space. I remember going to the vigil that night at the state capitol after Wellstone died, and just the bus was up there, and I was the research director, and I had a very partisan role inside a partisan political party, and there were people that were angry, and they were very angry. And I went, I was there for a couple minutes and then quietly left. And there's going to be anger, and people process anger in a variety of ways. And I think we all need to allow people to be angry. I think we need to give space to Democrats and legislators and those inside the party who lost their leader. Those that are angry about the recovery that the Hoffmans are going through. The Republican legislators can be mad about the scrutiny and changes that they have to have, that they're going to be experiencing about additional security. And we need to allow people grace right now. And there's going to need to be that. This is just unimaginable. What occurred with Wellstone was 2002. So we're almost 23 years later. It's still raw for so many people. And I don't think this situation of what occurred will ever not be raw. And we need to allow people grace. We need to allow people space. And again, I want to remind people, we'll be on for just a little bit longer, but we have a couple links there that Siri Everett with the DFL set up, some GoFundMe pages. If people can contribute to those, that would be great to help give some money and donations. The other thing I want to just point out is that tonight there is a candlelight vigil at the state capitol from 8 to 9:30. You're asked not to bring any signs, and it's there'll be a candlelit vigil at the state capitol, open to everyone. Be respectful, be polite, be courteous. Don't bring signs. They've asked that, and I hope that people can go, and that people can go and be supportive and be helpful. I think the vast majority of Minnesotans just are trying to find a way to be helpful. And I think if you can find ways to be helpful by donating, if you can, showing support by going to the candlelit vigil, write letters of support, reach out to your legislators, regardless of their political party, and check in, see how they're doing. Whether they're a Democrat or Republican, they're being impacted by this. And all of our legislators need to be welcomed and feel safe in their environment right now. And a lot of people are scared. I would encourage people to be honest about their mental health and to be supportive to consider donating to nonprofits and other groups that help with mental health, and seek mental help if you need it yourself. I'm a huge advocate for people having strong mental health, and this is going to be challenging for a lot of people. And if you're feeling that you need help, reach out. I would also say that one of the things that's really going to be important is bipartisan civility. And if we could find a way to come together in this situation, and how that looks is really not up to us. It's up to others. The one thing that I remember from the situation with Wellstone is it's really tough to tell people how to grieve. And I've lost people close to me since then, relatives, my father, and it's tough to tell people how to grieve. But I think we just need to allow a lot of grace for people. And those are some ways that I think people can get helpful. If you can donate, if you can go to the vigil tonight, write letters of support, take care of your mental health. And if there's others that you know are struggling, reach out to them. Participate in acting civilly and bipartisan and contributing in a bipartisan way. The other thing is to speak out against political violence. I don't want to get into motive and to get too far ahead of an investigation, but it's pretty clear based on what's been reported that there was an agenda and that there was a target list. And we've seen who was on that list. And this is a dangerous time right now. And we all need to take responsibility and de-escalate and contribute positively. And I'm so appreciative that my podcast host is back, because I think we've created a space where we can contribute positively. And I hope that we can be a part of a space that's safe, that can allow people to disagree without being disagreeable, and we can play a role in helping move people forward. Becky, your thoughts?
Very well said. I think anything that you mentioned is a great step forward. I want to add a couple because I just think it was the most lovely letter from the Hortman children. They also said if you want to honor the Hortmans, you can plant a tree, visit a local park, and make use of their amenities, pet a dog, tell a loved one the cheesy dad jokes, bake. It goes on and on. So while we can honor the Hortmans, like you mentioned, that list of items we can do just to create a better environment. I will make a plug that I'm a little biased, but the Citizens League is a great resource, a great organization that I'm on the board of that is seeking to do just this, is to bridge the divide and to bring civility back to political discourse. They have some great things on the agenda for the upcoming year or two that I think will be a great way to show honor and tribute to what's going on at the legislature and how this is going to impact for years to come, but also to show the strides that have been made with this tie in the House and some of the bipartisan work that has been done, led by Hortman and Dameth this last cycle or this last session. But I think anything that we can do individually when you're having conversations with your friends and family and somebody is, going off the wall, reminding them about the, humanity of these individuals in the situation. And again, just trying to do what we can within our circles and communities to tone things down a little bit, have some civil conversations, because this is scary. And we've seen things really escalate a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. And I hope we can get back to the mutual respect across the aisles and the respect of our elected officials.
That's a great way to end it, Becky. So here's our plan. This is our episode for the week. We're going to come back next week with a different episode, with a new episode. We're going to give some space. Becky and I cover the subjects of politics, and we want to resurface at the most thoughtful time. And so there's going to be some difficult days ahead. This will be our episode from the week, but our plan is to publish another episode this week. We're going to continue to promote the links below and share things across our social media platforms. If you have suggestions, follow us on social media, send us some messages. Becky and I really want to be thoughtful, considerate, and help be a resource to help people heal and provide that platform. And that also means listening to folks. So I really want to, under incredibly difficult circumstances, Becky, welcome you back. It's so great to see you. I've missed you, and it's great to have you back. But I couldn't have done this episode without you. And I'm so glad you're back, but under the circumstances, it's so tough.
I'm glad to be back, and thank you for leading the charge here. We'll certainly be continuing to share those links and other resources as they become available. And like you said, let us know if there's anything else you want us to do or say or hear from us.
We want to thank you, Becky. We want to thank you all for listening to this episode of The Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or the platform where you listen. You can also follow us on our website and across all social media platforms at @BBBreakPod. The Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky will be back next week. Thank you so much, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of you.
Bye.